That's a lot of stuff that you covered there.
No, it's not me. I mean, I yesterday. It should be on Able Danger any moment if it's not already. If anybody sees my 94-page document go up at Able Danger, please email me or text me. Then you can text me at 001 So anyway, David, yesterday was a very big day for Able Danger because a woman named Judge Anna von Reitz sent a letter to Martin, not Martin Dempsey, he's the pimple guy, Joseph Dunford, the other Jesuit four-star. Did you happen to see Anna's letter to General Dunford?
I think I did.
Well, did you think it looked anything like my letter to General Dunford?
Um, I can't answer that
Well,
because
you
I can't keep in my mind the two similarities or dissimilarities.
no, they're exactly similar. We're both telling Dunford that he's working as a corporate entity and his mask has been pulled down. But you don't have to read what I write, but you might find it interesting to read it. It was up last night around 9 p.m. Go ahead, over to you.
Okay, I'll do that. Well, I think Dunford is going to be in quite a lot of shit because he must have folded the Navy Marine Corps intranet into this fascinating organization that dates back prior to World War II called Spectre. And I saw the film, or I've seen the film twice now, because I wanted to make sure that I hadn't missed any clues. In particular, Spectre's efforts to integrate the intelligence networks of the Nine Eyes countries, because it's a great concern to the survival of the planet for individuals, we the people, to know who are the Nine Eyes countries. And unsurprisingly, Five Eyes countries are the United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the United States of America. And that's generally considered to be the leading intelligence network that can track anyone of interest. And of course, they're not particularly interested in peasants other than to kill them. Oh, incidentally, did you know that they claim to have killed Jihadi John? Field, over to you.
There is no jihadi John, and they can say everything they want to say, but John McCain and that queer in South Carolina can line up and kiss my ass because they and their boss, the faggot from Punahou, are going to be hammered by Putin. Stronger message to follow. I'm going over to the bakery. I'll be right back, David.
Okay, thanks, Field. So, Jihadi John speaks with a South London accent and he decapitates people. Apparently, he's quite a sophisticated user of technology because the snuff films that he made showing the money shot where people's heads get lopped off by this prick are very sophisticated and they're backhauled over the internet for distribution, I dare say, by Spectre to intimidate the masses. So it's quite intimidating to see people that you know having their heads cut off by psychopaths. But it's important to realize that this guy is not the smartest knife in the drawer, sharpest knife in the drawer. He's a hired assassin who's been groomed for a career in Spectre and is the special executive for counterintelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion, which pretends to control the world. And to a very large extent it does until Able Danger came on the scene. Because you could argue that Spectre is in a war with the 007 character. Now, Field has been kind enough to allocate me a belt with 007 engraved on the back, and I'm tremendously grateful. I wear it with pride. But of course, 007 is not an individual, it's a program. And if anyone has gone to see the Spectre film, they'll describe 007 in words such as they are attempting to shut down the 00 or the 00 program. And the 00 program is essentially a group of individuals that have the authority of the Crown to go out and kill people who are a threat to the safety and security of the British people, or the citizens of the United Kingdom, and by extension, the colonies. Now, what Spectre is doing, and it's really the Fabian Society, it's identifying people deemed to be fit to lead the race towards progressive globalization and the elimination of the sovereign state. Now, the state whose sovereignty has been most eliminated is, of course, Canada. And symbols are very important here. And I'm going to come on to that in a minute. But when I went back to see Spectre a second time, it supported the 00 or 00 programs war with the Nine Eyes countries. Five Eyes being United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, United States, and Canada. But that leaves four missing. Anyway, C, we'll come to C in a minute, makes a presentation to representatives of the Nine Eyes intelligence networks. And we know the five. What do we know about the other four?
Shouldn't there be another five?
Well, I think you're right, Field, and I know where you're going in this, but there was something bizarre in the film because South Africa said no. And South Africa, if my theory is right, if you added South Africa to BRIC, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China, which is 40% of the world's population, you would have 9 or 10 eyes countries. But there was one country that evidently didn't want to join, and then South Africa changed its mind. Now, why would South Africa change its mind? In the film, it shows, I think it's either Pretoria or Johannesburg in flames. And in the text or the dialogue that goes on in the film, the hero, if that's the right word, of the Nine Eyes Spectre organization is told all you're trying to do is blow up towns and cities and kill people. And he acknowledges that as a fact. But he's not the boss, but we'll come to that in a minute. So you have China and South Africa. Now those two are members of BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. In the film, South Africa says we're not joining. And then C has to regroup to persuade them to join. Well, one way of persuading a country to join this useless organization is to bomb the shit out of it or blow up its aircraft. So Spectre blew up that Airbus that left Sharm el-Sheikh and flew over the Sinai Peninsula and crashed in the desert. And as you pointed out at the last show, Field, it's very obvious from the debris that that was a target for Smacksonic, because there's elements of the aircraft that are intact, in particular the nose cone, but there's a lot of parts of that aircraft that have been basically incinerated.
Can I point out something that I discovered overnight?
Please.
Because I don't think you saw today's radio show, Andrew. You wouldn't be saying what you just said. The Russians have ruled out explosives. They've ruled out engine failure. And what they've come up with is a commandeering of the flight guidance system, which is another word for the uninterruptible autopilot. And it turns out that the aircraft beat itself to death, pulling as many as -4 Gs, and the G limit on transport aircraft is about 1.0 negative Gs. And so just to make this user-friendly to people that are not aviation engineers or whatever you call those guys that are scientists, aeronautical engineers, the airplane went wham, 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 wham. Then the wings fell off, the empennage fell off, and David, I'm putting you on the spot intentionally as a penalty for not reading today's radio show ad. Do you know where the weakest point of the fuselage is? Turn your mic on and say yes or no.
The empennage.
Well, you're close. The pressure bulkhead. And there's a picture in today's radio show ad, I think, of the pressure bulkhead. And when I say I think, I got up around 6 a.m. this morning and worked until about 12:40 on that radio show ad. So if anybody can go to the radio show ad and tell me if I did put what the pressure bulkhead, since most people don't know what that means, and 99.97% of the world's population has no idea what it means. But it's where the pressurized, let's say this is an airplane. This is the front of the airplane, this is the tail. So this is the empennage. Right about where the silver starts, the cabin of the aircraft is separated from the empennage with what's called a pressure bulkhead. And that is a place where if you have an overpressurization in the pressurized cabin, you can blow the tail off the aircraft. And that happened with United 93. Its empennage was blown off because of smaxonic insulation being ignited. In the case of this Metro jet, whatever it was, the A321, it looks like the Russians are satisfied that no bomb, no missile, nothing of that nature, no engine failure, that the aircraft was pulled apart by wham, 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 wham. And that can be done by the uninterruptible autopilot putting the aircraft into direct law. And direct law is something that Afterburner or Swamp or Bucky Badger or Mensamax might go out and grab. And if you're going to Google direct law, make sure you put in Airbus because it's an Airbus feature. A pilot can fly smoothly as long as you have normal law. When you go to direct law, the only control the pilot has is THS. I can't believe I remembered that. THS is trimmable horizontal stabilizer. Most airline pilots couldn't possibly control the aircraft with THS because most airline pilots today were trained after they spent their youth watching video games. Then they spent their college years watching Alex, what's his name, playing Jeopardy. And then they get their parents in debt for their college tuition. Then they go out and get some phony baloney job. Then they become an airline pilot. They've never been taught how to fly an aircraft by the seat of their pants. All they can do is program electronic crap. Well, guess what? You put one of these young twerps in an Airbus and put them in direct law, and what's going to happen to the aircraft? It's going to go wham, 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 wham. The wings are going to come off. So, David, I recommend you take a look at the article I posted last night and also this morning. The Russian article that's in today's radio show ad eliminates every single possibility except the uninterruptible autopilot. Over to you.
Yeah, and I think that's right, Phil. And of course, what they have to do after putting it through that alternate law.
No, not alternative. Direct.
All right, direct law is to remove evidence of the software hack into the system and the hardware or firmware hack, as it's sometimes called. And you're right, you don't need an explosion. In fact, very opposite. And you can check that by looking at the debris that's taken off the Pentagon lawn. What you need is an incendiary device to vaporize the evidence. And it's very clear that at the United 93 crater outside Shanksville, that there's been an incendiary attack on the evidence, because you can see where I think if I'm correct, Phil, the empennage has burnt its way into a crater, and there's not enough debris in that hole to fill half a dumpster. That's a 110-ton plane that's disappeared into less than half a dumpster. And of course, that's very effective if you want to engage in what's known as spoliation of evidence, and basically handicap or handcuff the investigators at the crime scene and make sure that they don't follow the trail up to the head, the mens rea of the conspiracy. Now, my guess is, Phil, that inside MI5 and MI6 and CIA and FBI and all these other cats, there are many honorable and capable people. And you have a network which I couldn't even begin to understand based on your career. there'll be many people listening to you very carefully and doing the best they can. And I've had a career that's taken me to some weird places and met some pretty interesting people. And I think my career and network, even if I don't know them directly, takes us into the world of 007. And I don't pretend to be as athletic as 007, in fact, or as immortal, because that guy, he flew a plane, a twin prop plane. He flew its nose right up the arse of a Land Rover, and all the goodies and baddies in the two Land Rovers that basically turned into a fiery mess. Well, the really bad guy, he walked out unscathed, and the woman worked out with barely a hair out of place. A very beautiful woman, and she's one of the good girls or good guys. But basically, that's got an extraordinary clash between raw evil, which is the special executive for counterintelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion, and a bunch of good guys who it seems that God favors for a while. However, I don't think God's patience is infinite, and it's time to drink the coffee and smell the roses, if that's not a mixed metaphor. And effectively what's happening, Phil, the hubris of these people is driving them towards Paris, where I lived for 3 years, together with a bunch of psychopaths. And what's very evident is that the delegates from the free world, or what's left of it, are going to go to Paris, and they're going to be presented with an option. Either they vote for this climate change crap and the reduction of the carbon footprint for the peasants, or they're not going to leave Paris alive, or on the way home they're going to die in another manufactured plane accident, perhaps. Now, incidentally, do we remember, or do you remember, Phil, that a pilot nearby Air France 447 that went through that nose-up stall saw a bright white flash? Do you remember that?
I remember the bright flash. I don't remember if it was white or blue, but the aircraft in question was a Portuguese airliner. The Portuguese airline company is TAP, and TAP was going the opposite course to what Air France 447 was. And as they approached their CPA, which is closest point of approach, they witnessed a bright flash of light right before Air France 447 was destroyed.
Right, and also when flight, would that be flight 11? I guess so. As it went towards the north face of the North Tower, just before contact, there was a bright white flash that was almost at the center of the imaginary crosshairs of the Node brothers, who did the most amazing piece of cinematography ever, because 1 second he had his camera pointing at a grid where some New York police or firefighter department guy was having a probe, apparently because they'd been warned of a gas leak. And then the guy with the probe looks up. Apparently he hears the sound of an aircraft going overhead. And the Node brother, I forget which one, Jules or Gideon, obviously false names, but probably frogs, panned his camera to the left, then elevated it and zoomed in 1.25 seconds before the plane appeared from behind the AT&T building and then stopped. And what he was setting up is what's known in the snuff film trade as the money shot. And I believe, Phil, that money shot, or the timing of that money shot, appeared as a countdown from a super accurate clock synchronized with either the US Naval Observatory master clock in the bunker of the Vice President of the United States, or the cesium fountain clock operated by Serco at the National Physical Laboratory in in Teddington in Middlesex. Because what they were doing there was they were running a death pool. A death pool is, and I think the death pool will find is very closely associated with the Clinton Foundation. If you can buy your way into a death pool with insider information over the Nine Eyes network, you know, or you and your intimate friends know, the precise time of the death of the victims. Even when the aircraft that's commencing its descent is, 8 or 9 minutes out of impact. And who would be in a position
Serco
to, yes, Serco would provide the clock or the timing for the betting pool, but the company that would allow you to hijack instrument approach procedures and final approach procedures is known to both of us very well, Phil, because it appears in chapter 1 of book 1, right?
Would that be McDonald, Detweiler, and Associates?
You're dead on, in Richmond, British Columbia.
And guess what else is in Richmond, British Columbia? There's a Best Western hotel that's directly across the street from the Foggy Dew pub.
Yes?
Do you think I've ever been to the Foggy Dew pub?
Well, I know you have, because I met you in one of our incarnations, and I don't know how many characters we've played, at the Foggy Dew pub, right?
Yes, you were sitting there talking to your brother, who was the only guy that would listen to you, while I was looking for VPLs on a Greek flight attendant, and I looked over her shoulder as she selected 3 songs on the jukebox, F4, C6, and D8. Now, some people wonder why I can remember those trivial things after 9 years almost. Well, if you'd seen the VPLs I saw, you'd remember too. So, David, over to you. Meanwhile, I'm going to put up a Google search that maybe some people can find that chapter if I put in the 3 songs, the Greek flight attendant, and the VPLs.
I think that woman was sitting by me and you tried to horn in.
I think she probably saw me as her escape from boredom.
You know, Phil, haven't we come along an amazing journey when you think in fiction or fact? Again, I come back to the point, you're 006. I mean, I think we may need a greater number of zeros in front of your 6, but I digress. And I'm 007, or our characters are. We've got 6s and 7s. If you look back on the collective work of Abel Danger over the past years, it's a massive confusion, but embedded in it is the nemesis. Did I teach you what a nemesis was?
Yes, we discussed that on the 8th of August of 2007 when we were talking about Hillary's foul taint. And also, well, before people think that I'm being disgusting, which I never am, of course, taint stands for tactical analysis involving naval treason. But Hillary Clinton and Christine Marcy and John McCain and that queer guy from South Carolina, they are a complete embarrassment to God-fearing Americans, to atheist Americans, to agnostic Americans, to gay Americans, to 3-legged billy goats that are Americans. There's no reason why we should have to put up with the type of crap that comes out of the mouths of John McCain and Light Loafer Lindsay. And John McCain keeps screwing up and demonstrating foreknowledge of things like upcoming aircraft hits. Just because you're short and you have a lumpy jaw doesn't mean that you're prescient, Johnny boy. Over to you, David.
No, that's right, Phil. So just thinking back on a few events that preceded that first chapter of that first book, in 1995, no, let me back up. In 1992, I met a guy by the name of David J. Hawkins, who had a very weird girlfriend in tow, who looked and watched very cautiously as I expanded on my themes. I don't want you to think of my theme being expanded in front of a woman, but that's irrelevant. And this guy, David J. Hawkins, had worked for McDonald Detweiler. And he was asking me a lot of very odd questions related to my artificial intelligence work in the UK and in the United States in Connecticut, where I was the head of artificial intelligence and geoscience research for Schlumberger. I found that a little bit weird because the company I've been working for in the UK or with, was Rakel Defense Electronics, which would later be taken over by Thales. And Thales built the flight box for those Boeing aircraft with various bits of technologies that were taken off the en route airway during 911. Anyway, I started smelling a rat, if that's the right word, maybe sniffing a bit of taint in the way these two treated me. And I began to think that maybe McDonald Detweiler was up to no good, that in fact it might have been taken over by, I didn't know the term back then, or at least I hadn't seen it in the James Bond book, or I hadn't picked up on it. But Spectre apparently first appeared in the James Bond or Ian Fleming's book, I think it was Moonraker of 1963, the year that JFK was assassinated. Anyway, cut a long story short, I ended up sitting in front of John McDonald, the founder of McDonald Detweiler, in 1995, and I had had clearance from Rakel in the UK to discuss with him the possibility of having Rakel buy McDonald Detweiler, because I saw that as a preemptive step to stop McDonald Detweiler falling in the hands of organized crime for future acts of sabotage such as 911. Anyway, the guy wouldn't look me in the eyes. Now, apparently a lot of women find me good looking, Phil, because he's not a woman.
Excuse me, David. We must have a Skype problem. Did you say Did you say a female above the age of 12 ever in history has deemed you to be good looking?
Yes, Phil, a few.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly.
And when I show them your photograph, they say, "Why do you hang around with this guy?" And I said, "Well, he's a trial." Anyway, let me keep going. I don't want to be cast aside.
Because you get to pick up my scraps. Did you tell them that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's in 1995. I, for whatever reason, think that John McDonald, the founder of McDonald Detweiler and Associates, which incidentally navigated the drone that would have killed Jihadi John through its satellite signal processing networks, which are the largest in the world, 80% of the world market. So I believe that John McDonald has got something to hide. The company, instead of allowing itself to be taken over in a joint venture between myself and Rakel Defense Electronics, goes to Orbital Sciences of Dulles, Virginia. And of course, this was a huge threat to the survival of the Republic, at least in as much as the citizens of the Republic believe it justifies survival. Actually, I don't think America at the moment, in the form it is, justifies survival, but I digress. So from 1995, I started watching McDonald Detweiler very carefully with my 007 network, such as it is. And I don't know the full scope of that network, but I think that it brings intelligence to me that is very powerful. So McDonald Detweiler is taken over by Orbital Sciences of Dulles, Virginia. Now, what do Americans know about Orbital Sciences of Dulles, Virginia?
That
it's the world. Go ahead.
Yeah, that they operate an L-1011 aircraft. Anybody want to? In fact, not anybody. I wonder if Swamper Mama's here today. She's very quick on researching stuff, and if she's here, Swamper Mama, who's not here, will not be able to put up a picture of the orbital L-1011 TriStar aircraft, but somebody else might find it. It's red and white. It's great big. It looks like a DC-10, and it's operated by RICO people. Over to you, David.
Yeah, well, Orbital Sciences is one of the principal contractors to BMEWS, the Ballistic Missile Early Warning System, and develops interception software that would give the party that controlled that software a shooting chance of intercepting an incoming nuclear ballistic missile unless perchance it was stood down. And unfortunately, that's what happened on 911. Orbital Sciences had a man-in-the-middle threat in its midst because the technical people at McDonnell Detweiler learned all of the techniques, both software and hardware, by which Orbital Sciences employees could assist the government of the United States of America identify, friend and foe type technology, incoming threats, and take them down. Fast forward to August the 7th of 2000, I, through my late wife's friend from the UK, got the email address of Andy Duport, the head of security for the British Royal Navy. And I sent him some emails, and I said, will you please take a look at McDonnell Detweiler's shareholders, because they appear to have bought McDonnell Detweiler from Orbital Sciences after Orbital Sciences was sued for misrepresentation of the revenues from McDonnell Detweiler by 3 or 4 very interesting pension funds. Essentially, one pension fund was the pension fund of the New York Police Department and a special group of its senior officers. Another pension fund represented the rights of the Fire Department of New York, FDNY, and then there was a bunch of teachers loosely catalogued or caught under the umbrella of the New York City Employees Retirement System. So they sued McDonnell Detweiler, they sued the directors of McDonnell Detweiler and the directors of Orbital Sciences for misrepresentation in the acquisition of McDonnell Detweiler as to its revenues. That claim was settled by an insurance company out of court. And how shall I put it? Orbital Sciences was extorted out of custody of McDonnell Detweiler, which came back to Canada, armed with all of the software and hardware techniques necessary to stand down the interception facilities of the ballistic missile early warning system and hijack an aircraft electronically through what Field calls it's what is generally known as the Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot, so that the plane can be flown to a safe landing and save the crew and the passengers. Unfortunately, with that technology, of course, you could change your mind at the last minute. Instead of landing the plane safely, you could fly it into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon's US Navy Command Center and attempt the overthrow of the United States government by force on 911, which is what they did. They didn't succeed for a variety of reasons. Because 007 was inside their OODA loop, together with a gentleman closely affiliated with the Naval's Marine Corps intranet, which is the largest internal network in the world, that was run on 911 by one Carly Fiorina, the chief executive officer of Hewlett Packard, and her 8A companies that reported to Field sister Christine Marcy. Anyway, Andy Duport sent me an email saying, please stop communicating with me. I don't know who you are. I don't know exactly when I received that communication, but something very dramatic happened to the survival of the United States as we know it. On the 6th of October 2000, the Clinton administration outsourced the operation of the Navy Marine Corps intranet, then under the nominal custody of General Jones, Marine General Jones, to a private company by the name of Hewlett Packard, whose CEO was busy driving Hewlett Packard, a very capable company, into the ground. She's now running as a Republican candidate, and she's dirty. Trump says that people in America shouldn't vote for a woman with a face like that. And I think that's a little rude, but then...
It's also accurate.
Well, it is, but you see, what's intriguing me always is not so much the way the face hangs, if you know what I mean, Phil, but the light in the eyes behind. And whether or not the signal that is being sent by those eyes, I think the eyes are the window of the soul, shows any kind of compassion for the thousands of technical and scientific staff that she fired. And what she was doing was she was decapitating one of the most advanced technology companies in the United States that is vital to its survival. And what's been going on in the United States is they've decapitated the top engineers and scientists in Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Hewlett-Packard and just about every other major corporation, because little Obambi has a theory, and he may be right, that if you dismantle America's key defense contractors and you stop them playing the role of mentor in the Small Business Administration to the 8A protege companies that are owned by people from, dare I say it, the Nine Eyes countries, then you can stand a fair chance when the time comes to take an exercise like Global Guardian and make the mentors, such as Boeing, proteges, and make the proteges, such as Base One Technologies just down the road from Hillary Clinton's house in Chappaqua, a mentor. And then you have the ingredients of a socialist revolution. So it was brilliantly done, and they had very elaborate devices developed by the British called dial-a-yield Lewis bombs, where there's a mixture of explosives and incendiaries like thermite, whereby adjusting the signal between the detonation of the explosive and the ignition of the incendiaries, you can have any kind of effect you want, including turning a 110-ton plane into debris that won't fill half a dumpster. And that is done strictly for the purposes of spoliation of evidence of the use of the Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot. So I think we're in many ways privileged, Field, you and I, with the team that's been assembled in virtual cyberspace, because I think we are the only organization of any credibility that stands between a threat to the delegates to the Paris Climate Change Conference of being nuked unless they sign on to a carbon capping tax and basically deindustrialize the West and take the taxes that are paid into the carbon disclosure project set up by Tony Blair in London on the 4th of December 2000, which incidentally today controls $95 trillion of assets on behalf of its signatory investors, which include the New York pension funds and the BC pension funds and the UK government's funds. That is to say, they've created a monstrous pool of capital which can be used to finance death pools, such as, for example, the death pool in New York in the vicinity of the Twin Towers, where temporarily, and this is where you move into the realm of voodoo science, these clowns like Justin Trudeau and his Fabian mates, they're saying the greatest threat to the survival of the planet is from catastrophic anthropogenic global warming, and they have deemed carbon dioxide to be a pollutant. And these guys are thicker than a bag of hammers, because carbon dioxide is a wholly beneficial, odorless, transparent fertilizer gas, without which humanity has to use vast quantities of polluting chemicals and fertilizers in the soil to make the plants green. So really, if you remove all the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and you can do that temporarily for a few milliseconds before the atmosphere returns to the status quo ante, if you remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere without replacing it with chemicals in the soil, the plants go brown because they die. So there is no Green Party, or basically it's misrepresentation. There should be a Brown Party. They're not interested in the environment. They're not interested in the welfare of the people downstream of some chemical pollutant. The people they should be talking to, put it bluntly, and I'm tired of pretending anything otherwise, are engineers like myself. For example, in the UK, I worked for the Central Electricity Generating Board in a variety of areas, production of energy, research, etc. One of the things that I was given a job as a student and an apprentice was thinking of ways of cleaning up the sulfur dioxide, sulfur monoxide, carbon monoxide, and particulates from coal-fired power stations. And you know what? That's what engineers are very good at. Optimization. Now, would I be able to have an intelligent discussion about the laws of thermodynamics with Justin Trudeau? He's, God bless him, a elementary school drama teacher.
Yeah,
he's good at drama.
Yeah, I wonder if he was dramatic enough to ever attracted the attention of Paul Bernardo, who just put out a book from prison. Did you know Paul Bernardo just put out a book?
No, I didn't, Phil.
Okay, Paul Bernardo and his wife, Carla Homolka, raped and killed a bunch of young ladies back in 1990s, maybe even the late 80s. And they worked closely with Russell Williams, and I would tell you Russell Williams' wife, but the judge, Jennifer McKinnon, up in, I don't know where it is in Canada, one of those snowbound parts. But anyway, Jennifer McKinnon said that we're not allowed to even mention the name Mary Elizabeth Harriman because of her ties to the Harriman Railroad fortunes of Chicago. So if anybody thinks that I would be so reckless as to mention the name of whatever her name is, Harriman. What was her name? I've already forgotten her name, and I just said
Mary Elizabeth Harriman.
Well, you can't be saying that. That judge up there in Canada will get mad at you. Her name's Jennifer McKinnon, and apparently the judges up there, they're cut out of different fabric than normal people. There's a judge in, let's see, is it Winnipeg or is it? There's a judge, a female judge, who got some pictures from a really bad website, and she seduced a black African, and then he sued her and her husband, but in doing so, a bunch of almost pornographic pictures of the judge were all over the internet. And I don't know why we, the people of the various countries around the globe, want to put up with the American Bar Association, the International Bar Association, and the rest of these reprobates. But I interrupted you, so go ahead, David.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's interesting to go back a little bit earlier in their careers because Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka were a team where it would appear that Carla Homolka would write the script and have the camera running while Paul Bernardo did the raping. And that, no, I don't think it was with Carla Homolka, but that was the kind of woman attracted to Paul Bernardo and vice versa. And apparently at the, is it the Scarborough rapes? It is alleged that at the University of Toronto, Paul Bernardo and Russell Williams met and went on joint raping exercises with a couple of female dates to film them. The Scarborough rapes. And in May of 91, Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo went to the wedding of Williams and Mary Elizabeth Harriman, and vice versa. So they were an item, a foursome, if you will, back in May of 91. So the question is, who are the puppeteers and who are the puppets? Because these are low-grade human beings. Someone with evil intent is looking at ways of infiltrating psychopaths into, for example, the Royal Canadian Air Force. How high did Russell Williams get? Well, quite high. He was the base commander of Camp Mirage in the Emirates, which was one of the centers for the Al-Qaeda attack of 9/11. And I believe Paul Bernardo was working with PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the parties that has the public key infrastructure used inside the United States Department of Defense to conceal communications amongst insiders. And there's a wonderful image, maybe someone could just pop it in the chat room field, of the Federal Bridge Certification Authority developed by Able Danger, which shows the root key to the Federal Bridge Certification Authority, which authorizes all missions of the Nine Eyes countries, has found its way from McDonald Detweiler, who introduced the technology with Nortel in, I think, 1993, from McDonald Detweiler over to the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense and the Cobra Gold operation of David Cameron, which allows Cameron and his White's Club colleague to synchronize the Nine Eyes special ops that include, I would suggest, the Rwanda genocide. Because remember, the Fabians and Spectre, remember Spectre stands for Special Executive Counterintelligence, Revenge, Terrorism, Revenge, and Extortion, would have arranged for a missile stolen from Desert Storm to be given to the French military at the air base or near the airport where the president of Rwanda was about to land, and firing the missile and bringing him down, triggering the propaganda out of Hotel Mille Collines, that's the Hotel of 1,000 Hills, that treated the Tutsis as cockroaches and triggered a genocide that killed nearly 1 million people, that is Tutsis and Hutus, where one of the favored methods of immobilizing the Tutsis to stop them running away was use the machetes shipped in by Boutros Ghali to cut the Achilles heel of the victims so they couldn't move, and the mob with the machetes could come along later and rape the girls, etc., etc. But there was a man, a Spectre woman, who withheld protection for the Hutus and the Tutsis that I think is very important, through an 8A company controlled by your sister. And that woman is Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State. Because on the 4th of February of 1994, she allowed a proxy 8A company acting for and on behalf of the Department of State to send a message to the United Nations Security Council asking them to debate the withdrawal of UNMIA, which was there to protect the Hutus and the Tutsis from killing each other. And General Dallaire, who wrote the book Shake Hands with the Devil, was told to withdraw, and the genocide began, and apparently that will give significant sexual stimulation to the Clintons, because they're sick puppies. But it's 12:36, Field, over to you.
Okay, who are these the sick puppies again?
The Clintons.
Oh, yeah. And then they got that half a daughter. It's that person called Chelsea, which is about 200 pounds of blubber attached to 40 pounds of lips. Her last name is Hubble, but she apparently likes the sound of Clinton better, so she misrepresents herself as Bill Clinton's daughter, which she couldn't be because he had mumps when he was a saxophonist down in that small town, and your dog's barking, in Arkansas. And if you have mumps and you're a male, then your reproductive organs don't work. And so not only is he a nutless wonder, in effect, but he also can't push a rope because he has Peyronie's disease. So Bill Clinton must have been very frustrated because he was lousy at saxophone, and he was also incapable of siring progeny. And of course, some of us have lots of progeny. I think I have 5 kids. I'd have to sit and think. I've got 1 boy and 4 girls. Yep, that's 5. So I don't like to come out of the closet very often, but I am in fact an overt female heterosexual sexagenarian. How do you feel about that, David?
Well, I think it's good, and I'm glad you mentioned Hubble, because in 1993, Webster Hubble was sitting down, he was number 2 at the Justice Department, and both Gore and Janet Reno personally tasked Hubble to run the Clipper project. And the Clipper project gave way ultimately to the Nine Eyes Intelligence Network. So we got a wonderful thread that runs through all this crap that eventually leads us to the top people in Spectre. And it's not a man, it's a woman. And back in World War II, it was a woman by the name of Wallis Simpson, the mistress of former King Edward VIII, who then became the Duke of Windsor. And our friend, or your friend, Wallis Simpson, was sent in 1922 by Spectre to China to be groomed in the art of sexual entrapment and blackmail, which he did very successfully because she caught the King of England, the King of the United Kingdom, and extorted him into doing the most amazing things, including using his crown authority, or in an ultra vires fashion, to authorize the bombing of Hiroshima. So we got a wonderful trail here for Able Danger. Able Danger, I think, is the 007 program. We're going head-to-head with Spectre, which is the Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, and Extortion. And Field, you know what? We're going to win. Over to you.
Yeah, but do you know why we're going to win?
I think I know what you're going to say.
Okay, well, let's see. What do you, well, let me write down my answer so I don't cheat. Okay, and then I'll ask you, don't tell me yet, I'm writing down my answer. And my answer has 5 words. Okay, and you can't see what my answer is, but don't tell me your answer yet, because I'm going to show my answer to the live stream viewers. Okay, they've seen it. What's your answer, David?
5 words, eh?
No, you don't have to get it in 5 words. Just, don't try to fit into my template. Just go ahead and give me your answer and see if it matches mine.
God's horse is ready for battle.
Well, mine is God is on our side, and that's true. He is on our side. But more importantly, we are on his side too, because not everyone who's called answers. But in fact, speaking of calls and answers, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if my cell phone took a call at 715-307-8222. And of course, being ever the conservative when it comes to OPM, other people's money, if my phone were to ring in the next 90 seconds, I promise I won't answer it. But I'll put it right here. So if my dial tone is still what it should be, Hawaii 50, we will have the pleasure of that. Oh, Wallis Simpson, 1936. Well, guess what I have that was built in 1936, David? Can you remember?
A motor car.
Yes, hang on. Junior Cookie, you're right. Texas Maverick, that's a wonderful picture you put up of a horse looking at somebody. There's David's picture. Everybody take a look at David's picture in the chat room. He's in disguise as a Great Pyrenees attack dog, miniature version. So somebody just called. Yes, 1936 Studebaker with a Chevy 427, and the license plates say Extortion 17, and they're fake license plates, but nobody in Pierce County, Wisconsin would ever stop me. There's really good people in this part of the country. In fact, there's really good people in all parts of the country. whether you're in the country of England, where you might be randomly in Telford or Nottingham or Brighton or some of those types of places, or at the Indian restaurant called the Blue India, or maybe you're in Cardwell, Montana, or maybe you're down in Denton, Texas. There's a lot more good people than there are bad people. And so what we good people need to do is just get behind leaders like Anna von Reitz. And when they publish something that's good, first of all, try to read it, and second of all, try to broadcast it. And David, I see that somebody has put up the big red button while I was giving my monologue. So I'll honor the red button, but the person's going to have to say 3, 2, 1, push it again because I missed it the first time. So anybody who puts up 3, 2, 1, push it, or any derivative thereof, I'll honor it. David, over to you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to feel the picture more realistic of my dog. It's not actually my dog. And a lady came around and visited the other day and saw a picture of an old Roman Empire and a picture of me at 27 or 28, and she said, "You're dead ringer." So I put that in, not out of hubris field, but just to sort of frame the scenario about whether I'm better looking than you are.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that, so you can let that issue go. But anyway, somebody says 3, 2, 1. If they say push it, I'm going to push it. So if you want to say goodbye, speak quickly.
Okay, bye all.
Duke, speaking of Anna's letter to Dunford, email me and I will email it to you. And or somebody else might remind me to email it to you. She posted it last night, dated the 12th of November. I need someone to say push it real good, but I promise, Duke. In fact, I can probably just post it to the chat room here in a couple minutes.